The key is always being there, and if you're gonna make rash, hurtful actions to your sons or family members, you need to actually care about their well being and their safety. You also need to be in part of their life to hear what's going on. If you're going to crash somebody's life, or if you're going to destroy or make hurtful decisions, you better be willing to watch or take responsibility for the consequences that come. Now, sometimes other people make choices for you. Like, do you think that the Jewish people that were 10 years old in Germany made a choice to be in those prison camps? Do you think that some of those Palestinian families who went to sit at dinner and had somebody come into their house, throw their children to the ground, then drag them out of the house, then put them on a truck, and then drive them miles and miles and miles away without any of their heirlooms or belongings or clothing, and then tell them they're no longer allowed back in their home to get their property, and if they see them again, they'll be shot on sight? Then the father tries to get his daughter's underwear and her daughter's belongings, and they shoot and kill the father. Who do you think made that choice? Do you think the Palestinian family who went to supper, who just wanted to put on their clean underwear, do you think they made some bad choice? Or do you think the people with the guns shooting people in the head, ripping people onto the floor, dragging them out of houses, then putting them on trucks and then driving them to another location and then telling them they'll be shot on sight if they go back for their belongings? Maybe they're the ones making the bad choice. Or how about a mother that drugs her child, makes him drool in front of people, makes up stories about him being depressed after giving his child downers and then showing him off, bragging to friends about how many pills she's giving to her child, having her child take the pills dry when people warn her that that's dangerous, ignoring those warnings. Then the mother giving that child an overdose and destroying the nervous system and trying to hide it. Then when the child talks to the doctors in front of the mother tries to hide it from the doctors. Then the mother puts the child in ballet. This is a male child who's with all girls dressed up as a girl in ballet. On top of this, on top of this, when the doctors and the teachers are concerned about this mother's child, the mother brings that child all the way to Texas for a whole new adventure, but totally ignores any of the doctor's advice, totally ignores any of the evidence in front of them, totally ignores the overdose, the shaking, totally ignores that her child is wearing jackets and when it's really not that cold out. And when he doesn't wear a jacket, when it's not that really cold out, when it's only like 55, 65 degrees, and he seems to be shaking. Nobody else is shaking at 55 degrees. Nobody else is falling down during fireworks screaming in pain. Nobody else seems to have problems moving their body and having a coordination issue. But yet this kid has one, and doctors were talking to my mother about it at the age of 7. But my mother ignored all those. Ignored the teachers, ignored the doctors, ignored me speaking about this overdose, ignored the people on the phone during the overdose, lied to my father about what was going on, forgot what the names of the medications were, made up excuses, made up false allergies, whatever she could, and then moved me to Texas. Then, when I was continuing to speak up about this and ask for help to a doctor in Texas, a primary care doctor, the psychiatrist didn't want to work with my mother. My mother was a little too unstable, and her stories didn't seem to make sense. The doctors in Texas weren't so quick to drug me. Apparently, they don't have insurance like they do in Massachusetts, so there's not a big scam system for doctors down there. But anyways, so I didn't get seriously drugged down there, and my mother was upset that the doctors weren't giving her dangerous drugs to give to me. So at this point, after only a year or two, she decided to uproot me again from my school. So now I've redone first grade once. I've had to re-get evaluated in Texas. I have a neurological disorder. The teachers are spending a lot of time doing physical therapy before I moved there. So I'm losing out on education. And now my mother wants to uproot me from my school and my education and put me in a cabin up in New Mexico with very little education to none. There was a teacher that came in for an hour a day for the first 3 months, but she quit, said it was too much of a travel for her to come in. So at this point, no teacher, no education. We did extracurricular activities like camping, scavenger hunts, fossil hunting instead of any classes. They would say, we're doing fossil hunting today. We're going to Elephant Butte Lake for the week. We're going to do this. And What happened when I got out of there? For one, my father sued because they seriously abused me. I never got the education back. And this place sent a big fucking files of, I don't know, printouts from online to my mother, and my mother tried to homeschool me. Yes, the loony was going to try to homeschool. She might be able to work with kindergarteners and first graders, but I am missing a bunch of chunks of education, and I'm supposed to be on like third or fourth grade by now. But instead, I never really start third or fourth grade. Now, about fourth or fifth grade, what's supposed to, I think it would have been labeled fifth grade, but it probably would have been closer to third or fourth. So between third and fifth grade, I also missed an entire year of education. I just got to play with toys, and I told my parents that. I let them know that I was just playing with toys every day. My parents were notified that I was playing with toys every day. They called the school. I don't know what the school said, but they punished me at the school the next day, and then we went back to playing with toys every day. Yes, they stood me in front of the class, said that I had to stand there all day in front of the whiteboard because I told my parents about what was going on in the classroom. And then the teacher said that each kid would have to sit at their desk doing nothing all day, no books, nothing, because Zach told his parents. Then she sat down in a chair, and after about 30 minutes to an hour, she left the room, and everybody got out and continued playing toys. And this continued for the rest of the year. I have no clue what my parents were thinking, but all I know is I was tired of being punished for my father's and mother's mistakes. So I told my parents again what was going on one more time. There are toys where I'm only playing with toys. I'm playing with wiffle bats. There are no lesson plans here. I tell them that one more time. They kind of ignore me. They give me a yup, whatever. And then I just miss out on a year of my education. I have no clue what the school told my parents. That my parents didn't seem to care to have a conversation with me about it. I brought this up to my parents. They cared the first time I said it. Then they called the school, and then they just ignored me. So I went with the whole year. Now, yes, this school did get shut down and caught. Other parents did care about their children. They were attached to their children. So when they found out, they actually did something about it. But my mother and father, they just let me suffer. They did not care enough to listen to their own son. So instead, I went without a year of education. Yes, an entire year of just playing with toys. Now, other parents were able to go after this school. I'm not probably because my mother and father were moving so much. It also probably made it hard for them to finally notify my father that this was going on. I bet if my father stopped moving and buying and selling and buying and selling and moving and vacationing, he probably would have got notified that the school I went to was getting sued. They probably would have got something. But he's moving around, vacationing so much. If there was a letter or a phone call that tried to go out to my father, letting him know that other kids, were taken advantage of at the same time as me, he wouldn't have got it. No, he doesn't even get my emergency room calls. During my seizures and injuries, he doesn't even get the calls for those. He was my emergency contact for 11 years of close to death. I froze to death, and they shocked me back to life. I was pronounced dead on arrival, and I don't even think my father knows about it, even though he's my emergency contact. He can't even answer the fucking phone for the emergency room. You think he's answering the phone for some random person he's never met calling this to tell him that his son was taken advantage of? No, fuck no. He'll probably hang up before he even gets through with the phone call. So yeah, other parents cared about their sons, so they got justice for their loss of education. I lost out on not only 1 year of education on the school, with never getting justice for it. On top of this, I had 18 months of playing in the woods in New Mexico. I had years and years of teachers trying to figure out what level I'm at. I mean, it's just not completely nuts. And I had homeschooling that didn't teach me shit. Oh my god, I learned how my mother looks like, and I know my mother's more of a lunatic than ever. And I also learned that my father is a good teacher with my mother. If my father's around, then I can learn. I do remember learning quite a bit when my father was around and my mother on the homeschooling. But when my father wasn't around, oh fuck. Oh fuck. Oh boy, did my mother go nuts. You try to yell stuff into you. It doesn't quite work. You don't go, just know it already. That doesn't exactly a good teaching method. But then my father comes in, and then all of a sudden she's a different person. Isn't that funny? So yeah, I have a lot of differences with most families. Most people think of their father and mother, oh, they must have loved their son. They gave their son a full education. Oh, they probably bought him a car and probably, oh yeah, he probably lost his license of a DUI or something, or he's probably or they bought him an apartment and he burnt the apartment down or something like that. Nope. My father didn't give me shit. I didn't get an education. I didn't get my health. I was dropped out at 18 while having seizures, while having health issues, while my mother just died. Meanwhile, I was already living in a program before that. It wasn't even like I was home for that long. You know, if you're trying to think like, oh, well, you know, you were home and everybody has to leave home eventually. I was home for like a year, 1 year. I think there was like 8 years prior to that where my home was in Haverhill or Lawrence. And Lawrence actually had a good plan to get me a first apartment, get me to keep my Social Security. They had a whole program designed for me, but my father lied to them and fucked up the whole program. That's also not at my concern. I did the program just like any other kid. They even told me that I was the best kid there. Yes, if I could stop smoking weed, they said I would be, they would be amazed. I'd be the best they ever fucking have. They said all the kids we have here smoke weed. You go, that's a pretty common one. So I'm the best there other than that. They said all the rest, they steal stuff, they break stuff, they get mad, they yell. You know, you're like having another staff member around, they told me. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, you help out. You're good with everybody. You're good with the girls. They go, you know how many boy-girl fight stuff we had going on before you got here? We haven't had a boy-girl fight or any arguments since you've been here. I said, yeah, I don't like arguing. We're all supposed to work together in this program, right? And they said, see, that's why we like you, Zach. We like you. And I said, oh, okay. And things were going great in that program, and that was the only program. All the other ones, I mean, they would, just awful stuff, awful stuff. Even the doctors were willing to do heavy drugs. That program in Lawrence, they were telling me I should talk to my mother and father and maybe have a doctor that I pick out, and maybe I should start taking my own medicine into concern. And I said, really? They said, yeah, what do you truly know about your own health? I said, nothing. I only know what my mother tells me. They said, see, that's a problem. You need to know stuff based on how you own interactions with the doctor. Like, if you feel tired or symptoms, you should bring it up to your own doctor and see what he says and see if it matches what you're talking about. You shouldn't have a mother who you say lies about you talking to your doctors and issuing you your health care. And that was one of the first times I realized that I should be an adult and start figuring out what my real health is like. Instead of believing in my mother's fantasies and her lies all the time, because that's what I did all the way to about age 20. But at age 19, somebody advised me I should be thinking about my own health and I should be trying to explain my health honest, truthful. I should use real events, real falls. I should listen to the people around me when I fall. If I have a seizure, I should get documents and what people see as happening. If I'm shaking, I should discuss these things. And the things my mother did to me, I should also discuss with therapists, psychiatrists, and doctors. The only problem is my mother didn't want that to happen. And by the time I figured it out, she was dying in the hospital. I wasn't allowed to see her. Then she comes home, drinks booze while 20% of her liver working, goes back to die in the hospital some more, ends up dying in an ambulance on the way to the emergency room for a liver transplant. They're going to put her on the head of the liver transplant list. Meanwhile, she was just drinking while she needing a liver transplant. She had 20% of her liver working. She goes straight home. The only day she went home, and the whole time she was at the hospital more than 6 months. She was home for 1 day, less than a day, to come home and see her family. And her family was in the liquor cabinet because she said she wanted to come home to see her family, and she blew past me. She didn't call the sister, the daughter. She didn't call her son Jeff. She didn't talk to anybody. She went right to the liquor cabinet, started pouring herself a drink, and she sat with herself and a drink. So she obviously thinks that her liquor glasses and the liquor bottles are her family, because that's what she came home for. She went straight for it. It was very clear. My mother came home to drink. So she started drinking. I told my father to handle it, and I couldn't watch it anymore. This is not somebody who should be on the top of the list for a liver transplant unless they agree to stop drinking. You don't take a liver from a 10-year-old child or let other people die in the hospital needing a liver who might actually live a long ass time and then just drink yours away. But I wasn't allowed to be there at the hospital. No. My father controlled the narrative of my mother's dying. How she died, why she died, who was allowed to see her, who was allowed to go to the inheritance. Even the funeral, my own brothers didn't want to show up to see her. No way. Her own grandson was talking shit about her at the funeral, telling me, Zach, how can you be sad for her after what she did to you? Yes, at my mother's funeral. My mother's grandson came up to me and said, how could you be sad for your mother dying after what she did to you? And giving me a bunch of huff about being sad about my mother's death. But see, I was sad for my mother's death and what she took with her. She took my health and any future of me becoming healthy with her. Whatever she was doing, whatever those drugs were, whatever the names of those pills were, whatever her mental illness is, it ends with her death. And that makes it very hard for me now. I mean, she came clean with some of it. She came clean with giving me extra Epicac. She came clean with it in front of my sister. She admitted to a lot of criminal stuff. She did some awful stuff right in front of my father. She was crazy right in front of the family a bunch of times. So there is a lot of real proof out there. There's a lot of evidence out there. There's a lot of me getting sick, like on clockwork. My mother doesn't want me going out trick-or-treating. Everybody else says I can. I want to go. So my mother gives me pills and I get sick. Every Halloween, I can't go out trick-or-treating because I get a mystery illness right after taking pills. That is not good. And with all that information, if you put it all together, it makes a very clear picture of what was going on. But with my mother dying, it gets much harder for me to have her confess. I was hoping for a confession. I was hoping for her to come forward because that's the best way this could end. The best way that I could get help is to get my mother to want to help fix her own mistake. But now that she's dead, she doesn't get a chance to do that. And my father's running away into the sunset with my mother's best friend getting drunk and going on vacations. So he's already moved on from me, my mother, the whole family. He's done. He just wants me to go die in the woods. He doesn't want to deal with any of this shit. He wants to forget any of this stuff happened. He was trying to forget the shit that was in front of him when it was happening. Now she's dead. Now he can move on. Now he can run away. And I can just die in the woods. He can drop me off. He can just blame it on anything. His new, well, I know what. I'll have illegal drugs brought into the house. Yeah. We know he's a drug addict. Maybe if he takes these illegal drugs, we'll blame it on him. We won't take responsibility for any of the situation. We won't mention that we got him thrown out of his own housing because we lied to Social Security. We won't mention that if he had his Social Security check, then he could actually maybe get an apartment. He could live a life, but I've crashed his Social Security, fucked it up so many times that he has no way to live, and we fucked up his health so he can't work without getting injured, and he can't drive because of his injuries as well. But let's just fucking put him out on the fucking woods to live like a caveman. Yeah. He'll live in the shelter, right? Yeah, we won't even think about how living in the shelter might be a problem without his real illnesses on paper and without actually getting him diagnosed for his actual injuries. He's bumping in the tables, he's falling down, he's playing tennis barefoot, not feeling it. He's seeming to have problems in New Mexico. He has years of abuse. He hasn't lived with us for years and years and years. He lived in a program for 8 years. He just comes home and his mother dies. Then I remarry and bring a strange woman into the house. Then that woman brings in drugs. Then I'm giving away all his mother's property. Meanwhile, he's getting phone calls that his inheritance is getting stolen. His Social Security is all fucked up. His housing is all fucked up, and his father's profiting off of it. Now he's going to sell the property that he used his Social Security to pay for and put him out on the street. And when I asked my father, well, where am I supposed to live seeing as you fucked up my housing? Oh, don't worry about that. You'll figure it out, is his answer. I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Years of that. No, he never had a plan, nothing. He was just going to drop me off in the middle of the woods again. Well, guess what? When he dropped me off in the woods, I did go to the shelter. But guess what? When I had a seizure in the cold water shelter, they didn't want me coming back. When I shook and couldn't move in time, I couldn't get back. When I was on heavy doses of the medication my mother and father told me I needed for life, I was fucked up too much to be in the shelter. Those pills I was on were fucking me up too much to be in the shelter. My neurological disorder fucked me up to use the shelter. It needs to be diagnosed, it needs to be documented, I need to be treated, and then you can drop me on my head. But you can't drop your fucking child out after you crippled them. The stuff that has to be fixed. Right now, you fucked my social security up. You fucked my housing up. You fucked my future up. You dropped out on my education. I'm missing 4 years of education. On top of this, my body is junk. I can't drive. I can't move. And I can drive as soon as my father takes responsibilities for his actions. As soon as I get a diagnosis for this neurological condition and I'm properly treated, then I can drive. Then I can collect Social Security and work. Then I live a normal life like the rest of the people who are disabled in the same way I'm disabled. But people with my disabilities require their human rights to live. If you take away their human rights, like their education, their Social Security, the ability to use a shelter, the ability to work, the ability to get any health care in an emergency, if you take those from a person and then expect them to stay alive, it's almost impossible. They are going to get more and more hurt until they're eventually dead. And this is the plan my father has done for me. He has taken away all hope of getting Social Security by crashing and burning it and draining it for himself. He has crashed and burned with my mother my health. My mother's the one who did the actions. My father just stood by and allowed my mother to give me pills that I wasn't even prescribed. Meanwhile, when I'm having an overdose at his own feet, he doesn't even want to take responsibility for that. He doesn't even want to mention the overdose at his feet. No, that's too hard for him to understand, that I don't like having an overdose in his house. Yes, Dad, I don't like having an overdose in your house. Is that so hard to understand? Is that so hard to understand? I was a 7-year-old. I was trusting you to give me medication to make me healthy. Your wife brought me into a hallway and gave me pills. An hour later, I can't see out of my eyeballs. I can't talk. I can't stand up. I can't breathe properly. I'm over there. She's on the phone with emergency people. When they tell her to bring me to the emergency room, she refuses, and you don't have a fucking care in the world that this is going on around you. Meanwhile, I pass the fuck out at your feet. Then when I mention this at the doctor's office, you guys blow past it like it's no big deal. Then when I mention it again at the age of 8, no big deal. Then when I mention it again at the age of 10, my father and mother, no big deal. Then my father starts just not giving a fuck. He just doesn't give a fuck. I mean, during my own adoption, I took pills. Yes, my mother gave me pills before we got in the car. I got drowsy in the car, only a little bit, took a nap. But by the time we got to some courthouse, I don't know what it was actually, my father and mother told me this had to do with the adoption in the courts. That's all I know. And there was wooden benches in there. They brought me in. I was so drowsy I could barely walk. When I got to the wooden bench, I passed out, and all I remember is a wooden bench, the grains of the wooden bench. I just remember my head going face into the wooden bench and then not waking up until I'm being shooken by my mother saying, it's all over, it's time to go. But I couldn't really walk because of the drugs my mother gave me, so she started carrying me out. But then she couldn't really carry me, and people were giving her looks, so she yelled at me and gave me, just walk, you can walk, just walk, and tried to drag me. Now, I was walking, but I was like stumbling a little bit, very drowsy. We got to the car, I fell back to sleep in the car. We got to an adoption party. Yes, the drugs were in my system, but I wasn't passed out. I was just super drowsy, still wanting to sleep. But I was able to kind of stand up now a little bit, but I was super drowsy and weak. So at this point, I'm at this adoption party, and people are giving me gifts. Now, I love parties. I'm a happy, very hyper kid normally. But my mother just gave me drugs, pills. So, I am tired and looking on the floor for a place to fall asleep. But there is no place to fall asleep, and everybody, the party's for me. I mean, I want to fall asleep during my own party. So anyways, they pulled me up a chair, and people started asking me, aren't you happy to be here? Aren't you happy to be here? Aren't you happy? Why aren't you happy to be in this family? Why do you look so sad? Why do you look so tired? Why do you look so depressed? Why do you look so tired? I said, I don't know, I'm tired. I don't know, I'm tired. I don't know, I'm tired. At that time, I did not understand that some medications have side effects like drowsiness. I was only 7 years old, so I didn't understand side effects yet. But my mother did, and she did this on purpose. She knew that that medication or whatever pills she was giving me would make me extremely drowsy and extremely high as a kite. So, anyways, at this point, I'm at my adoption party, fucking woof, room spinning tired. I guess is the best way to describe it. Room spinning tired. So tired that you feel like your vision's a little off. Have you ever not slept for 3 or 4 days and noticed your vision seems a little off? Like that. So I'm literally falling asleep in a chair while people ask me why I look so tired. Meanwhile, my mother's trying to tell people she thinks I have a mental illness called depression or bipolar. Meanwhile, she's not telling people that she just administered drugs to me. That's the kind of like my mother did constantly. Leave out the context. Do something, leave out the context, and then make up a story around it. My mother was very good at this. She even did it with some loved ones. Me and my father had to back up my Alice and Amy. When my mother was alive, we went out to eat with Alice and Amy. We went to this dinner and they ordered a glass of wine. Everybody had a glass of wine but me because I was a child. Amy is 21 at this point. Everybody said so. But on the way home, when we're driving, my mother says that Amy should be ashamed of herself and that Alice should be ashamed of herself, letting her daughter use a fake ID in front of her. How dare she? And me and my father looked at each other and I said, Mom, it's pretty hard to fake ID today. You need to know a guy at the DMV because it has a scanner barcode that goes into an electronic computer system. I'm 16. I know this because I have a fake learner's permit, which I buy cigarettes with. So I do know that when you're buying liquor, you need the barcode. And that was I was sitting next to her and that was a real ID. I saw it. It was a real ID. And yes, Amy was 21 at that time. Exactly. But even if it wasn't, my mother thought that it was worth talking about and said that both Alice and Amy should be ashamed of themselves to be using fake IDs out to dinner at an expensive restaurant with us because, we could get into trouble, blah, blah, blah. What did my mother really do, most likely? She forgot somebody's birthday. That's it. My mother forgot somebody's birthday that was a good friend of hers. A good friend of hers' daughter, she forgot which birthday, what year she was born at. And because of that, instead of admitting that she made a mistake forgetting the birthday, she's going to make up a whole story to herself that really that must be a fake ID and that they're trying to pull something. And so then she convinced herself that that was a fake ID, and now she's in a car ride telling her family how somebody else used a fake ID in front of them when most likely it wasn't. It was just my mother's mental illness once again acting up. But my mother swore to the very end that that was a fake ID. We could never get my mother to stop believing that Amy used a fake ID out to dinner with me, a young boy, and a bunch of other people in an expensive restaurant, and the waiter took the ID all the way to be scanned. The ID got returned to Amy, and it was fake the whole time. That's what my mother is going with. And it's a total lie. There's no way that that ID was fake. Amy and Alice would never, ever do that. They would never. They are way too uptight to be using fake IDs in an expensive restaurant that scans them in another state, too. They traveled to another state, I'm pretty sure. So I'm not sure that my mother really thought that through. I'm pretty sure my mother just forgot a birthday and her mental illness kicked in. She turned a good thing into bad. She does this all the time. When she makes a mistake, she wants to treat everybody else like shit and make up stories about them. My mother did it to me like crazy. She put some of them permanently on my record so I can't get health care. My mother was really good at making up stories. Like, for instance, I won a swimming medal in an orphanage. Do you want to hear my mother's fantasy? So, I was about 5 years old, something like that. No, I was about 7. Anyways, I went to show my mother a swimming medal. Now, where did this swimming medal come from? When I was in St. Anne's Orphanage, they brought a bunch of us boys into a van. They drove the van to some parking garage. The parking garage was right next to some type of Y building or something, a YMCA. We went into the YMCA. They had us practicing treading water and in the shallows and all that. And then they said whoever treaded water the longest would get a prize. So we all tried to tread water and keep our head above water, and I treaded the longest. So I ended up getting the swimming medal. So the staff member took out a Sharpie and wrote ZG, what my name was, Zachary Greennails, on the back of the medal, told me to hold on to it and not let anybody steal it from me. Meaning the other kids, because the other kids were notorious for stealing in these orphanages and programs. Anyway, so the other kids got toys like a jumper man with a parachute and some tops and spinnies and stuff like that. At this point, we went back to the program, or I should say the orphanage, St. Anne's, and I ended up putting that in my other prize. I got the month award for best behaved student in St. Anne's. And my award comes with a piece of paper and a $10 gift card I could go to Toys R Us with. And I got a Lego box with that $10. So I hid the medal in my Legos. Then I went through foster care and I would bring my Legos everywhere I went. Well, I finally got adopted by a foster mother. So I was playing with my Legos and I came across the medal. So I said, oh, great, I better show this medal to my mother. I forgot to tell her about this. This is the only accomplishment I have in my life. I mean, even during baseball, they give everybody fucking stupid medals in baseball and t-ball. I was the only kid that got a medal this day. So let me show this to my mother. So I take the swimming medal and I go to show it to my mother. Now, do you think my mother said, good job, Zach, where did you get it? Oh, in the orphanage, okay. Oh, back before you met us. Oh, okay. Do you think that's what went on? Do you think I got encouraged to do better? Do you think they did any of that? No. What my mother did is she called me a thief, said I stole the medal. Now this is based on nothing but her own fantasies. Keep that in mind. She just made this all up in her head. She just made up fantasies. So she says, this medal must belong to another kid here, an African American, because he's athletic. So you stole this from a black kid, because this could only be an African American's medal. There's no way this is your medal. Not only that, you're lying to us about the swimming lesson you had. You're lying. So you're a liar and you're a thief. On top of this, you're trying to hurt me by putting your old last name on this medal, aren't you? Aren't you, Zach? You're trying to hurt me. Yes, you are. And yes, I'm Zach. My mother's screaming at me, saying I'm trying to hurt her by winning a swimming medal in an orphanage. Anyway, so she's a lunatic yelling, and I can't make heads or tails of her loony speeches, but she's screaming at me, saying that I must be writing G's on the back of medals. So I start crying and I go to my room. I cry, and she continues to act like a lunatic. At this point, she starts to go and look for pills to drug me some more. And she does this by telling the doctors I have attachment disorder because I'm hurting her by putting G's on medals. And on top of that, the medal is stolen and I'm a liar. And no matter how many times I tell my mother to stop lying about me, and no matter how many times I cry, no matter how many times I tell my mother I won that in the orphanage, that is mine, my mother continues to steal my accomplishments away and make up fantasies and lies about her own son. All for kicks and laughs. All so she can try to make me seem like some disabled mental illness case, because every single time she did this, it always was around some mental illness. Oh, it's attachment disorder. He's trying to hurt me with a G. Oh, he is bipolar. Oh, he needs schizophrenic drugs. Oh, he needs all of them. Doctors had to be like for one, luckily they stopped the Zyprexa and some of the dangerous like drugs that my mother wanted, but they didn't stop all of them. My mother continued to try. And after moving me around the country several times, they pretty much gave her whatever she wanted after that. They couldn't make heads or tails of what was going on after my mother brought me to Texas, New Mexico, Maine, then back to Mass. So they had no clue what to make of me at that point. My mother really did a good job at covering her tracks. So anyways, yeah, that's my childhood.